welcome to the new podcast, Lifeis with Furious Stiles. And as I explained on the latest episode of the Furious Stiles podcast, this particular podcast will be a little bit more on the serious side. You don't necessarily have to be a music head or a hip hop head or someone who's into entertainment. It doesn't matter what you like. This is probably something for everyone who just wants someone to relate to, mentally, or looking for maybe some answers, or just someone who has lived it, who has seen certain things for the amount of years that I've been on the planet. And maybe you haven't been on the planet as long as I have, and you could use a little bit of advice, a little help, and just someone who can relate to what you're going through. And that's what my goal is with this podcast, is to help those who are looking for some answers with whatever experiences I've ever had and anything that I might know. I don't know it all and I haven't experienced it all, but maybe you'll find some answers here. And in regards to life, because we know how tough it can get. Today I wanted to talk about a very special someone, and I want to start the story off before I even get into the story, I want to just talk about the concept of death, and just the idea that we all know that we're going to face it. But even though we know that, many of us still have a hard time with that reality. Maybe not so much about our own mortality. A lot of times we as humans will, like myself, will be more concerned with the people that we love as opposed to us ourselves being afraid of passing away. Because I'm not so much afraid of that at all. I understand that's a reality. But for the love of my family, friends, and others, that's where death becomes difficult for me. And I'm sure it is that way for a lot of people, where it's like you don't want to see the people that you care about. You don't want to see them hurt, and you don't want to see them leaving early. And but whether they leave early or whether they've lived a good life, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's going to be difficult regardless, because you're having to let someone go that you love, and you're going to have to live the rest of your life without them. And that's a harsh reality to handle, regardless of what age that person was when they left. I mean, that was somebody that you loved, and now you've got to figure out the rest of your existence without that person. I want to tell a story about a guy. I'm not going to say his government name, but I'll tell you what I called him. I called him Dad. And his story started in Mississippi, down in the Delta, in a county. The county was called Sunflower County. In those areas, you have towns like Ruleville and whatnot. A lot of people who aren't familiar with Mississippi or those areas, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, Sunflower County, that's where it all started for him. And his parents, my grandparents, that was the home that he was in, with a mother and a father, a hardworking father, hardworking mother. He was the youngest of four. The oldest sibling he had was a sister, and then below her was a brother, and below him was a sister, and then my dad, a brother. He was the youngest. And my dad was very accomplished man throughout his years. It all started there in Sunflower County. They eventually ended up in a town called Greenville, Mississippi, which is where I was born. And it's He ended up going to schools there where he excelled, did really well as a student, all the way from his younger years to his older years, from elementary to high school to eventually graduating with high numbers, and then going to an HBCU that wasn't that far away by the name of Jackson State University. I'm sure you all have heard of it. And that's where he met my mom. So that's the immediate family that I come from. That's where it all started, because they met there. And eventually ended up getting married. And about a year later, they ended up having my brother, my oldest brother. And they were living in St. Louis at the time. So that's when my oldest brother was born. Eventually they ended up moving back to Greenville, and my middle brother and I were born there. So there's a lot of story to be told about my dad, because he was a very, very accomplished guy. I mean, he graduated from college. His major was math. And I think we all know how difficult math is. And, you have to be pretty smart to major in math and graduate with high numbers in that and excel from there. He worked hard his whole life in the business world, the corporate world. He ended up going to Washington University, got his master's from there. He ended up going to Purdue. And after that, he was a scientist in the military with the degree that he received from Purdue. I mean, I could talk all day about his accomplishments. I mean, this is just a smart guy. He was, and not only that, I mean, he was very athletic. I saw all the trophies, all the tournaments that he used to be a part of with tennis. And when he was in school, he was a big time swimmer, and he did track, and just very talented, nice looking guy. And I'm the son that looks the most like him. So that might sound like I'm being a little braggadocious, but it is what it is. So getting back to this situation, last year, Christmas Eve, I received a call from my mom, and she let me know that I guess my dad had fell in the kitchen, and she was just telling me to just hurry up and get over to the house. I don't live real close to them, but I live close enough to where I can come through and help out and visit often. But it's not like a fast drive, but it's not the longest drive either. This was a call that I had been fretting for a while, because for the last 4 to 4.5 years, my dad had been having some medical issues for quite some time. And, it just seemed like around December, around the holidays, it seemed like he was always in the hospital. And I remember even him being in the hospital on Christmas Day. I mean, it was just always kind of happening around that time. He would be in the hospital for many medical issues, many things that were starting to pop up as his life continued to move forward. Just a lot of stuff was happening. He actually had been diagnosed with dementia, because he definitely had a lot of brain fog. He didn't forget us, though. He just would forget motor skills, like how to put his shirt on, just, things like that. He just wouldn't remember. And sometimes he would be kind of spaced out. He also had Parkinson's. And so that made it difficult for him to even move around. And for those that know, dementia and Parkinson's, a lot of times they are connected. Usually, a lot of times when you have one, you'll have the other, but it's not a 100% thing. You you don't always have both of them, but there's a high probability that you will. So he was diagnosed with both of those. So, and I remember the Parkinson's was very difficult as well, because it was like the dementia was difficult on the mind and Parkinson's was difficult on the body. And he used to have to kind of scale the wall to walk, and he moved really slow. I mean, it was just he just was having a hard time. And we had a caretaker for him. We took care of him. And even with all of that, even with all of the care in the world and all the resources, I mean, it still doesn't make it easy. It was still a difficult life for him. Things had gotten tough. And actually there might have even been some incidents 8 years ago that he might have been dealing with this for a while before we even knew it. But anyway, he getting back to Christmas Eve, when my mom had called, I was on my way over there, and I became very emotional during the drive. I was with my wife, and I actually had to pull over. I had to stop the car in the middle of the street, and the time of night that it was, and especially being around the holiday time, thank goodness there weren't a lot of cars around, because I literally had to stop the car when I was driving on my way there, because I was trying to hurry up and get over there. But me knowing what was going on and knowing what I had been through, or the family had been through with all of this, this was just a day that I was always, I guess worried about. So, I ended up stopping in the middle of the street. Wasn't a busy street at the time. And my wife took over the driving, and she took good care of me, and got us over there to my parents' home. Now, when we made it to their town, when we made it over there, right before we got ready to turn the corner to where their house was at, I could already see the flashing red and blue lights. It was a lot of cars over there. You had the fire station ambulances, the red ambulances. You had, I think there was like a police car too, and I think that's it. I mean, I know it was about 1, 2, 3, 4, probably about 5 vehicles over there, all flashing lights. And we parked as close as we could, and that was a long walking to the house from where we parked on the street. It was just that reality, man. It was tough. It was tough. It was the hardest day of my life. It was the hardest day of my life. So we get into the house, and there was a lot of guys in there that were greeting us and just letting us know that, hey, we're here, we're helping, and he's in the kitchen, and they're taking care of him. We're doing everything we can. And I started walking towards the kitchen, and I just barely saw him on the floor. And I quickly turned around and ran upstairs. And I went into a room that I grew up in that house. And I was just in there. I was emotional, and I was having a hard time trying to breathe. I guess you call it hyperventilating, panic attack. I'm not the type to get panic attacks or anything like that, but I'm assuming that anybody can get them. You don't have to be the type that gets them for that to happen at least once or twice in your life. So I firmly believe that's what was going on, because I was having a hard time trying to catch my breath, because the reality of seeing your superhero, your king, on the floor like that, and they had the machine on him, I guess the CPR machine, if you will, that was, helping him breathe. So you could see his I guess his chest contracting and whatnot. They were trying to, pump the air into the lungs. But I was upstairs and I had to get myself together. I had to pull myself together. And I was having a really, really, really hard time. Eventually, I made my way back downstairs. I talked to some of the guys there, just answered some questions, asked some questions. The guys were very helpful. I mean, this is Christmas Eve, and there was, I swear, it must have been about 15 people in the house. But everybody was very, very sympathetic because, I mean, it's what they do. This is their job, so they're used to this, and they're good at what they do. So at least that's how it looked like they were doing everything that they could. Eventually, we ended up leaving because they didn't really know where we stood on his health at that point. So they wanted to go ahead and get him to the hospital. They did everything they needed to do at the house. They got him connected to all the machines. They had him on the stretcher and everything. And now it was time to get him to the hospital. So we followed them up there. My mom and my brother was actually over there. My middle brother was actually there. And let me make sure. Yeah, and my middle brother was actually there. And they drove in one car, and my wife and I drove in my car, or my truck. My wife and I were the last ones to get there. And I just remember knowing that regardless of all of the help that we had, we weren't in the clear. And so we're headed to the hospital. And we get there, we park, get up on the inside. I want to say, I don't remember what time of night it was at that time. It might have been around like 9 or something like that. But I remember when we got into the hospital, I remember asking like where he was at the front desk on the emergency side. And they told me where he was and how to get over there. And I remember my oldest brother kept calling me, and I'm trying to figure out where my dad is. And I just didn't have time to answer my phone. But my oldest brother kept calling me. And eventually I found out it was for a good reason, or a bad reason. But it was to inform me of something. It was to kind of to help lighten the blow, maybe. I eventually answered the phone. By the time I had got to where my mom was, I didn't get exactly to my dad's room, but I was close by his room. But they had a waiting room, and I could see my mom because they had a window on the door. And I could see her in this waiting room, and you could see that she was talking to like maybe a nurse and a doctor. And I knew it wasn't probably any good news. So I answered the phone. My brother, I was telling him, I was like, "Hey man, I'm trying to find Dad's room. That's why I haven't been able to answer your call." And he was like, "Yeah." He was like, "All right." He said, "I was just trying to catch you." And he said, "Okay." I told him, I said, "I can see Mom. I'm about to go in here and talk to everybody about what's going on." So he was like, "All right." Anyway, I hung up the phone. I walked into the waiting room, and sure enough, I get in there, and I want to say it was my mom was the first person to tell me. She was just like, she's like, I'm sorry to tell you, son, but your dad didn't make it. So that was the worst news I ever heard in my life. Yeah. Anyway, the doctor and the nurse, they let us know that they did everything they could, and I want to say that I believe them. I think I believe them that they did all they could. I mean, my dad had been struggling for a while. My middle brother, which is my older brother, I say middle just to kind of give you just to be a little bit more specific on where he lands as far as the family structure goes. But he came in, and I guess he hadn't gotten the news. I think he was getting himself prepared to stay the night, and so he was getting all the stuff out of the car, getting his bag together and everything. And got my ring back there, and so essentially we had to let him know, and he kind of stopped and froze and was quiet. And then he was like, let me step, I need to step away for a little bit. So I think he went for like a walk outside of the building or something. And so that was definitely a huge blow to him as well. I mean, because it's like, obviously we're all, my family is very tight knit, and we all, the love is just tremendous between all of us, all five of us. And, it was hard for all of us, and just having to tell my brother that was tough because, like I said, he was getting his stuff ready to spend the night. He just thought it was just going to be, another rough holiday of dad being in the hospital around the holidays. So that's where it all ended for my dad. That's where the story ended, right there. Yeah, it never really got easier after that too. I remember his caretaker, she showed up and was there to support, and of course my wife was there to support. It was tough, man. It was tough. I mean, it just doesn't matter who it is that you love. It doesn't matter what the age is. Now, obviously, it's a much, much tougher pill to swallow when it's somebody who's young. But regardless of, and don't ever in a million years let anyone tell you that your pain is any less because the person that you loved lived a pretty good life for a little while. Because I know a lot of times people will sometimes people will, I don't want to say trivialize, but they'll kind of downplay when it's someone who's older. But it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, your life is not over. And now you have to live the rest of your life without this person who's always been there for you. My dad was always there for me, always. Even in his tough times, even in his sick times, he was a great listener, always there to listen, always there to provide encouragement, words of wisdom. And he's the reason why this new podcast even exists. He was the inspiration. And, just losing him, and I remember just doing everything that I could to look for materials on Google, just trying to read how to deal with grief. And I was looking for videos on YouTube to try to find somebody who could tell me what to do, or obviously I was already talking to my family. I put myself in counseling. But I just wanted to make sure that I would be one of those people that would share his story, because this is not a club that anybody wants to welcome anyone in. The I lost my parent club. I mean, we all know it's coming, but regardless that we know it's coming, it's rough. It's tough, whether it's a dad, whether it's a mom. And it's always probably a lot extra tough, or more tough, when you're losing someone that you were actually close with. Because I know there's a lot of people out there where a family member might pass and they'll be sad and they'll mourn, but they might not have been very close to that person. So it didn't hit the same. But when you have a family member or a friend who you considered family, that the pain is tremendous. It's tremendous. I mean, I'm still dealing with it. It's still tough. It's still hard. I mean, my heart still bleeds. I still get emotional about it every week. And I'm just now able to get through a video without having to turn the camera off or turn the microphone off, because I've tried this already. And I know it's probably seemed like I haven't been pumping out any content, but I just haven't been in the mood. I really haven't. It's just, and with my dad passing away, that was really only the beginning. Because, like I said, after that, I planned the funeral. I didn't really sleep much trying to plan the funeral. I was getting his clothes together, getting the pictures. I was coordinating everything with the funeral director. I mean, I had a lot of work on my hands. I'm kind of the head patriarch of the family now, if you will, because my oldest brother, he doesn't live close by, but he is definitely there all the steps of the way. He's there, but he lives at a distance. I live closer to the foundation. So it's a lot easier for me to be there physically, because I don't live as far away from my mom and my other brother as well. But yeah, it was tough, because it wasn't even just one funeral for Memphis that we did for his for all the people that he knows in the Memphis area, but he and we are originally from Mississippi, so we actually did a second funeral. So not only did I have to have another hard day of my life, another one of the hardest days of my life, by having to attend to coordinate and put together my father's funeral in Memphis. The next day we had to turn around and get his body to where he's from so he could be buried where his mom and dad and sister are. And that's the sister that's right above him, because his oldest sister and older brother, they were living in the St. Louis area. So, so they wouldn't have been buried in their whole foundation and family and kids and everybody that they had. That's all in the St. Louis area. But we had to get my dad down to where he's originally from, so he could be buried with his mom and dad and his sister down there. And that was tough too. So it was kind of like you never really got a rest for a while. I mean, I didn't even really have time to grieve. I was so busy trying to put together the funeral. I mean, it was just tough, because you're trying to grieve, but then you're working at the same time, and yeah. So it's tough, and I just want to make sure. I just wanted to tell this story just to kind of help relate to anyone out there who's having a hard time grieving. and that they're just looking for somebody to relate to, because that's what I was doing. So it seemed only right for me to make sure that I put some content out there that would be cathartic or therapeutic for someone else who's going through the same thing, because it's tough. I mean, I'm just now getting to the point where I can even talk about it without having to stop, because I have tried this video before. I've tried this podcast before, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So, but his legacy, it will continue to move on and flourish. I mean, I got this. I'm here. I'm here for my family. I'm one of the other things that I'm having to deal with is making sure that I'm there for my mom, because she's essentially on her own now, and she's a tough woman, but I got to be there for her every step of the way. And that's also part of what I was saying earlier about how when you lose a family member, for a lot of us, someone might tell you, oh, well, that was going to happen. He was an older gentleman and this, that, and the third. But a lot of people don't realize that's just the beginning for a lot of us, because life gets a little tougher when now you find yourself trying to take care of yourself and your own family, but then also having to reach back and try to be as supportive as possible to the family that you come from originally, with my mom and dad. And like I said, I have to, there's a lot of things that I have to take care of now since I'm in close proximity to my mom, and I'm doing a lot of things for the family. And there's just a lot of other things that have been going on since he's passed, and it's been tough. So I know a lot of people can probably relate to that as well. I mean, that's a really losing someone that you love and care about so much. That in itself is enough. But just the fact that it's like, okay, now you got to step up and you got to be there for your fam whenever you can. And there's just been a lot of things to take care of for the family, just a lot of things. I don't want to get too specific just to put all the business out there, but there's just a lot of things that follow when the head patriarch passes away. And for those of you who have even lost your moms, when the head matriarch passes away, I mean, that's not easy either. It doesn't matter which parent it is, it's going to be tough regardless. But I want to reiterate to everyone out there, no matter who it is that passed away and how old or how young they were, don't listen to anyone who's telling you, well, that person was sick, it was coming, and yada, yada, yada. No. No. That's not how this works. Pain is pain. Grieving is grieving. Love is love. So if you lose somebody who's always been there for you, somebody that you really love, it doesn't matter if they were 100 years old. They're gone forever, and they're never coming back. And you've got to figure out how to move through life without them now. So you might mourn that person, but after mourning that person, now you've got to figure out how to move through life without their wisdom, without their knowledge, and without their love. I mean, I guess their love is still here because they loved you while they were here. So you're still wrapped in their love, essentially, because you know that if they were still here, they would still love you. So, but you don't get to see them. You don't get to talk to them anymore. And that's tough, because I talk to my dad every week. I might not have seen him every week, but I definitely talk to him every week. But I would try to get over there every single week. It was part of the routine. It was very rare that I wasn't at the house every week. It might have been, I might have been out of town, all kind of other things going on with my own life. But whenever I was here available, I was over there every week. It became part of the routine because because we were always there for each other anyway. But even more so when he was dealing with his illnesses, I was even more conscious about it, trying to make sure that, make sure that you see your king every single week, man. But yeah, it took a while to get here, but I'm here. I'm dealing with it. And for everybody out there who's dealing with this and going through this, yeah, I understand. I get it. Do whatever it is you got to do to get better. And like I said, I put myself in counseling immediately. I just was trying to think of all the ways to man up. And counseling isn't maybe necessarily for everyone, but I felt it seemed like it was worth a try. And I think it went pretty well. But even after that, there was still work to be done. Just me, working on me and grieving and trying to get past it. And one of the things to know is that I've learned, and this is something important before I go ahead and end this podcast. One of the things for anyone who's happening to listen to this or see this on YouTube, one of the things to remember is this. You're never going to get over it, but you will get through it. If that makes any sense. It probably sounds crazy, but I think eventually it'll all make sense. You're never going to get over it, but you will get through it. And I don't believe that you have a choice but to get through it, because I'm sure that there are other people around you who love you, who need you. And they're going to need you to get through it, because you need to be there for your family. Yeah. So, rest in peace to the greatest man to have ever walked the earth, my dad. I'm proud of you. I salute you. And I love you.